On the 7th of February 2009, the following was posted on a forum in a thread about its users' most disturbing experiences. I'm one of 2 janitors in a large apartment complex. My job includes checking up on tenants that haven't been seen in over a month due to the fact that to enter or exit the apartment complex, one must pass a security camera at the porte cochere. What that means is that if a tenant has not been seen in over a month, there's a good chance they're dead. Before this incident, I had already found 3 dead bodies. 2 old people passed away from natural causes and a junkie overdosed. So, naturally, when the landlord told me to go check an apartment rented by a guy in his 50s one morning, I was expecting to find him dead. When I went in, there was a kind of musty smell. It was pretty faint, so it didn't seem likely for there to be a corpse laying around. I called out the tenant's name, but got no response. I went around the apartment looking for him and to see if it looked like he'd been there recently or not. There wasn't much dust anywhere, so it definitely seemed like he was still living there. When I opened the bedroom door, I literally screamed and backed away. There was what appeared to be a mummified woman sitting on the bed. You know, all dark gray-brown and dry-looking with an open-mouthed grimace and teeth visible, arms positioned kind of awkwardly, a couple patches of hair on the head. All naked. That was clearly where the smell came from, but it didn't really smell like a dead body as far as I could tell. Now, obviously I'd never smelled a mummy before, so I couldn't be sure, but to my nose it smelled like garbage and semen. I called the police. It turns out it wasn't actually a mummy. It was basically a homemade love doll. So there was probably a lot of, you-know-what inside it. I'm not sure what it was made of, but even the police were a bit freaked out when they first saw it. Oh, and the guy was hiding under his own bed, and only came out when the cops showed up. I really don't know what to make of that, and I don't think he even tried to explain. That made the whole experience so much scarier because, what the fuck? The guy still lives in that apartment, presumably still doing whatever he does with that creepy-ass life-size mummy doll. 6 days later, the same user posted a thread about people ringing his doorbell and throwing pebbles at his window every night. He begged people to stop bothering him, explaining that he didn't care what people did in the privacy of their own bedrooms, and that he understood the tenant was likely suffering from some kind of mental illness. He also explained that he couldn't just move because his job required him to live at the apartment complex. Others were quick to deny responsibility for the harassment and point out that his location wasn't public, and that he'd never posted any personally identifiable information. Later that evening, he posted another reply. He admitted that it was possible that the one behind the harassment wasn't anybody on the forum, but that he was certain that it was in relation to the tenant and his doll. Many users suggested that it was the tenant himself, which he couldn't rule out, but considered unlikely because the man barely ever left his apartment. Some speculated that the tenant had convinced his friends to target the janitor, but the janitor insisted that he didn't seem the type to even have friends. He promised to investigate further, which raised some eyebrows as it now seemed like he'd accepted that it could be the tenant's doing after all. Attempts to get him to explain what he meant by investigating proved unsuccessful, as he stopped posting altogether. It wasn't until 3 months later that the janitor posted again. He prefaced the post by saying that he understood most people there wouldn't believe a word of it or label him a troll and promptly forget that he'd ever posted anything on the forum, and in addition, he stressed that it would be his last post. He explained that he had broken into the doll fucker's apartment one night with the presupposition that the tenant would be asleep. What he found was indeed the man sleeping in his bed next to the doll. Only the doll was stroking his hair and whispering into his ear with one of its legs outstretched over him. The janitor froze in his tracks and stared in disbelief as the dried-up fingers swept back and forth. For what felt like minutes, he could only observe. Eventually, his courage returned and he demanded an explanation out loud. As soon as the tenant woke up, the doll fell off of him as lifeless as any other doll. The janitor repeated his question, raising his voice. The tenant simply jumped out of bed and crawled under it, whimpering quietly. The doll's unmoving gaze was fixed on the janitor, its body twisted in a pose that would be too uncomfortable for any human to endure. Clearly, it wasn't alive, and he began to wonder if he had imagined the entire thing. He apologized to the tenant, attempting to soothe him while approaching the bed. He crouched so that he could look under it and speak to him to his face. A crackling noise from above sent chills down his spine. He turned to look up over the bed and saw that the doll had moved to a more comfortable position, its head on the pillow and its body straight on its back. Looking under the bed, he saw the tenant was already crawling out from the other side. He tried to get the tenant to explain what just happened, but couldn't get a single word out of him. The man climbed back up onto the bed and lied down next to the doll. The janitor concluded the post by revealing that he had been in a psychiatric ward for the past 2.5 months after telling the police about what he saw. If he hadn't agreed to be committed, he would have been arrested for breaking and entering. Many users did as he predicted they would and called him a troll, promptly discarding everything he posted as lies. And others took him at his word and attempted to explain the incident with increasingly outlandish theories. On the 17th of August 2009, I was asked to check up on the other janitor as he hadn't come out of his apartment for a month. Over the past year, he had garnered a reputation of being mentally ill, and before his disappearance had told me on several occasions that he hadn't gotten any sleep, even with sleeping pills, thanks to continuing harassment. My apartment was next to his, but I had never noticed anything out of the ordinary at night, so I brushed it off as all being in his head. I'll never forget what I saw when I entered the apartment. My coworker was dead in his bed with the mummy doll curled up beside him like a lover.